Welcome to the Airlift Workshop, where you get expertise from the air suspension specialists, keeping you on the road and in top condition. Today, we're installing an Airlift 1000 kit on a 2020 Jeep Gladiator. Remember, this overview doesn't replace your installation guide. Grab yours out of the box and let's get started. First, mark the current coil spring location in reference to the upper and lower spring seat. Remove the lower shock bolts from both shocks. Next, raise the truck with a floor jack and support the frame with safety stands. For filming purposes, we're using a drive-on vehicle hoist. Drop the axle low enough for the coil springs to be removed. With the springs removed, remove and discard the rubber spring isolators off the top of the coil springs. Using a pair of pliers, install the airline clamps onto one end of each airline. Remove the valve caps off the air springs and install the airlines onto the barbed stem of the air springs. Slide the airline clamps over the barbed section of the stem. Slide an air spring spacer over each airline and onto the top of the air springs, making sure the boss on the spacer is facing away from the air spring. Insert the assembly into the coil springs. Set the rubber spring seat on top of the assemblies, making sure the end of the coil spring is positioned correctly in the mount. The end of the coil spring indexes into the rubber spring seat in only one way, and reinstall the assembly onto the axle. Ensure that the marks you made on the upper spring mount and axle earlier are aligned correctly with the assembly. With both springs in position, raise the axle up and insert the shock bolts back through the shocks. Install the nuts onto the bolts and tighten finger tight. Then, raise the axle all the way up. Torque the lower shock bolts. Using zip ties and leaving slack in the airline above both spring seats, tie each airline to the existing lines that are above the frame. When cutting airlines, never cut from the side or with wire cutters. You'll leave a jagged edge and ruin the hose. Instead, use a sharp razor blade or a hose cutter to get a square, clean cut. If you're installing a single-path airline, choose a location for the T-fitting on the wheel well or rear bumper. For a dual-path installation, eliminate the T-fitting and route separate airlines for both air springs. Now, pick a convenient inflation valve location. You could use inside the gas cap access door, inside the rear wheel wells, or the license plate or rear bumper area for securing the inflation valve. You may need to drill a hole. Place a nut and star washer on the inflation valve and push it through the inflation valve hole. Use a rubber washer, flat washer, and nut to secure it in place. Then twist on the valve cap. To complete the installation, remove the safety stands and inflate the air springs to 5 psi. That does it. Remember, you can find more information about all of our products at airliftcompany.com. And our knowledgeable customer service team is always just a phone call away. Thanks for joining us in the Airlift Workshop.